You're listening to the Sanditon Chronicles, where we talk all things Sanditon and Sanditon adjacent. Come along with us as we dissect all of your favorite characters, scenes, and dialogue. We have so much to tell you. Hey guys, welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm Maureen.
I'm Janice.
We are back today with a comprehensive video on all of your comments on the episode recaps. You had our live last week, and this week we are going to go over not all of the comments because while we love to read them, some of them are very long, and we don't want this to be a 4-hour long episode. So we're going to go over some of them. Maybe we'll try to address the ones that we haven't gone over in the podcast. We'll try to respond to them outside of the podcast in person. So we're going to start with episode 1. We are going to go top down. V Brown says, speaking of the importance of the earrings Mary gives to Georgiana. Oh, I forgot we talked about that. We see G wearing them throughout the episode and season. I think the writers and costumers realized how poignant that gift was too. I too saw it as showing G that she's a Parker. And Mystical Margaret responded, I could see those earrings handed down as heirlooms to Georgiana's descendants in Sanditon World. Absolutely. Yeah. And I really do think that was the whole point of it, especially when we see that symbolism there. And then in episode 6, we see that symbolism with the matching, coordinating colored outfits with Charlotte and the Parkers. It was them welcoming into the fold.
Yeah, no, that's that. Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about those earrings, but that was such a poignant moment.
We need to rewatch this, Janet. Janice.
Yes. Yes, many times. But that was such a touching moment, that she wanted to make her feel really included. Yes. And, her birthday was a good way to honor that. And yeah, it was really good.
And it showed how Mary viewed her too, because typically those would pass down to your daughter. It would go from mother to daughter or father to son. And so Mary giving that to Georgiana was saying, I care for you like you're my own, and your well-being is very important to me. And it was especially poignant as she was trying to, in season 2, find a good match for her. And so now that she's 18, Mary is saying, my protection isn't going to go away.
You mean 21?
Yeah, that's what I meant. It's 18 now, but 21 then.
Right.
When you become an adult. So I think that there was that was a weird sentence. I think there was truly a lot of importance to that gift on multiple levels.
Yes, I agree.
Vokalst Westy, I am so sorry if I said your first name wrong. She says, love that all 3 women wanted to scream out liar when Lockhart and his solicitor were calling Sydney a charlatan, but all 3 held their tongues. Yeah, I bet they wanted to say an awful lot of things to Lockhart that they didn't during that trial.
Yeah, definitely. It had to have been hard to keep your mouth shut. I mean, it was that is, we all wanted to yell it out. In fact, I probably did yell it out at the TV.
Yeah. And I think too that what I liked about Kate and Rose, I couldn't remember the real names for a minute, is that when they would pan over to them, they would purse their lips shut. Like they were physically fighting to say. And I thought that was a nice way to represent what they were thinking without actually having dialogue there. And I like that stuff. And I thought it was really well done.
The way of biting their tongue.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. They might have even been biting their tongue.
Yeah.
Nina Klein says, I think that Mary shutting down the conversation about Charlotte's trip to London was more about not revealing Georgiana's kidnapping. I think that was part of it. She's talking about how I had brought up in that first recap,
right?
That I thought they were trying to hide it from Ralph. And I do think, yes, her kidnapping was part of it. But I also think it's very clear that Charlotte did not give an accurate portrayal of the men that she knew in Sanditon and how she felt about them and how close she was to them. And I think that was Charlotte was relieved for that reason that Mary shut it down.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think she didn't want to. It could have gotten very emotional for Charlotte too, and so I think that was her way of sort of like, move along. There's nothing to see here.
Exactly.
Let's go into something else. Yeah. Mary is such a wonderful character in this series.
She's right up there with Esther for me. I think she's I think she was overlooked, not because she didn't act the part well, but I think because there were so many other louder characters in season 1 but in my thousands of rewatches of season 1, she was a pivotal character in that season.
Right.
And throughout the series, because she is that woman who is the quiet force behind Tom. And she is viscerally in the corner of righteousness and being better than you are called to be. And I think it's really important for her.
Yes. And she was really good in season 1, but she didn't play quite as big a role in a lot, in pieces of it. She was more the traditional. I do think one of the differences is that Andrew Davies wrote more of that first season, and I think they strayed further away from the traditional way that Jane Austen was screenplays were written from the great Jane Austen works. That's what I think.
And I think Davies gave her an opening there too, because he ended the series with her, fighting with Tom of, I used to tell me things. This is not who you are. I can't be, that whole big fight they had at the end of episode 5.
Right.
They opened that up because then we see in episode 7 and episode 8, Tom is relying more on Mary more, and Mary's speaking her mind more. So I think that Andrew Davies really opened that part out so that Justin could really take that character and develop it so fully.
Well, of course, Justin wrote that episode, but Davies was overseeing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I forget who wrote what in season 1. I cannot remember.
I think he wrote 1, 2, and 6. And
Justin did?
Justin wrote I believe 5, 6, and 7, and then I can't remember the other author's name that wrote 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway,
Audrey Cumby says, love your recaps and insight into the new characters. Charlotte doesn't tell Augusta and Leo because she didn't want to tell them she is marrying someone else who is not Alexander. I think you're right. I think she was in love with Alexander. I think she knew she was in love with Alexander. I think she knew that he had feelings for her, though it was clear that she questioned how deep they were. But I think that she also didn't want, I think it felt like when Charlotte was in Sanditon, even when she came with Ralph in that first episode, she wanted to leave everything from Willingdon behind. She didn't want to acknowledge that she's marrying Ralph because she was in Sanditon and she wanted to relish the time she was in Sanditon. And I think partly that was because she knew that it was all going to go away sooner. She felt like it was if she was going to go through and marry Ralph.
Well, I also think that how would she explain to the girls who clearly loved her and she loved them why she was going to be in some of their family, and when they didn't really know what Alexander had said to her?
Yeah.
They didn't know how he had treated her.
Exactly.
So it was she was in a very awkward position.
Yeah, she absolutely was. And Ralph didn't help situations.
No.
The way he would just randomly appear at her side, it was very, and he, of course, he was so happy that he was marrying her.
Right.
And so it just made it doubly awkward.
Yeah.
Clearly, no, he was the only one satisfied with that.
And he clearly didn't know things.
No. And he clearly, and this is why, I ended up liking Ralph in the end, because he did love.
He let her go.
Exactly. That's exactly why. But he did not actually love Charlotte because he doesn't know Charlotte. And he didn't like who she was when he saw her somewhere else. He only liked the subservient Charlotte that he saw in Willingdon when she was around her father and her siblings.
Well, and also I think, it was the small town Charlotte, the Charlotte that he grew up with. That was his image of Charlotte. He didn't understand how she had grown and changed until the very end of the series.
And it sounded like he was kind of raised to believe he was going to be her husband. So
it sounds like the parents had kind of planned this from early age.
Yeah. So he probably he probably never even looked at anybody else. He goes, well, I'm going to marry her. So I'm just going to invest my time and focus on her.
Yeah. Yeah.
QV McCrae says, ladies, I should have listened to you regarding spoilers. I accidentally clicked on a musical montage and saw a complete recap of the whole season. Oh no. Yes, always listen to us about spoilers. Always. I did that twice in the season, and I'm so mad at myself.
It was hard to avoid if you were even looking at Sanditon posts. I mean, anything that had Sanditon in it. But
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
just had to not look because it's like, some people like to read the end of the book before they read the
Mhm.
book. I don't. I don't
No.
like if I walk into a movie partway through, I'll turn around and walk out because I want to see it from the beginning.
Yeah.
I do not want to know the end before I get the beginning.
My only thing where I go to the end is when it's like a murder or a drama or something like that. And I need to know if my favorite character is going to die because I get very invested in these characters. And if they're going to die, I need to mentally prepare myself. I watch Chicago
Okay.
PD, and
Uh-huh.
this is not a spoiler because we are currently in season 10 and this happened in like season 5. So if you don't know, sorry. But my favorite character was a guy named Al. He played Casey Jones in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 90s. And that's who I knew him
Okay.
as. So that's because I grew up with him and he was my favorite person. He was the coolest guy in that movie. And the way Chicago PD is it's Dick Wolf. So it goes across like Law and Order SVU and all these other shows. And there was a character where something happened to her. And then the next episode, it didn't even address it at all. Like, what just happened there? Because it continued on a different show. And I don't watch that other show. So I missed it. So I had to look it up. And I found out that Al freaking dies because and I was so upset that I had to mentally prepare myself. And even when the episode he died, I was going through chemo at the time. And I'm sobbing and like hard to breathe on my bed watching this. He's like, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Because he thought cancer, chemo, something went wrong.
Yeah.
No, just somebody that I like died on a show. So that's
A
the only
character,
time.
yeah.
But with
Well, I
Jane
will
Austen,
say,
you don't want to know the end.
right. Well, I will say that, and there have been a few series I've watched where there were series that were out, the whole thing was out, and I have gone to I I can never say it, International
IMDb.
Movie Database, yeah, and looked up to see if that character appeared in later episodes, which doesn't tell you for sure that well, if they're there, then they lived,
Yes.
but they don't, even they might have been written out or something and not have died, but
Yeah.
so okay, but I don't want to know. I really love to see things from the beginning to the end.
Yes. And even with that, it's not like you're seeing how it happened, all the details. You just want to know if they stay or if they go, and that's it. Because
Right.
you still what would be the point of watching the rest of the show or reading the rest of the book if you know all the details of how it happened?
Exactly.
So yes,
Exactly.
always listen to us about spoilers. um okay, Mystical Margaret. Oh, that's a big one. It says I love all the new characters introduced in season 3. I completely agree. Lurk, it says. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Charlotte told Lady Susan that she didn't mention her engagement to Augusta and Leo because it didn't seem relevant. Yeah, that was a big red flag right there. Clearly, Charlotte is still feeling misgivings about marrying Ralph, at least deep down. I thought that it was very moving when Mary gave Georgiana her mother's heirloom earrings. I agree that the Parkers very much considered Georgiana as a part of the family. I believe you feel the same way about Charlotte, yes, and I think that was proven over and over and over again over the 3 seasons. I binge watched season 3, and it is for me the best of the series, my absolute favorite. But I'm still looking forward to these recaps and discussions. Did you have a favorite of the seasons?
Okay, I'm gonna have to say that season 1 is still my favorite season.
I think.
I mean,
I would agree.
It's. I mean, a lot of it is because it was. It helps that there were 8 episodes. It helps that there were actually fewer characters, so you could concentrate on the characters that were there more. And in spite of the heartbreak at the end, it's still my favorite season. Yeah. And episodes, I mean, episode 6 is still my favorite episode, but I have, I mean, I love season 2 and 3, so don't get me wrong. I love them, but nothing comes close to the dance, the golden ball, as they say. Yeah. That, the lines and the delivery and everything. So
yeah.
Anyway.
And I think for me, I spent way more time in season 1, and I spent did we have 2 full years in season 1 sitting there and wishing all these things? So we sat there and binge watched this and didn't want to leave the world, we all created what we wanted the outlying stories to be. and we all created how we wanted the end to go. And so I think that's why that remains my favorite season. But
Right.
I think that the other two are tied for how much
Yeah,
I love them too.
I mean,
tied with themselves.
right. Yeah, the 2 and 3. Yeah, I get you, because there's so many. I mean, there's so many great things that happen in seasons 2 and 3.
Yes.
There really are. And I think that the writers and everyone did justice. I do miss, we don't have the same music director from season 1. I do miss that. That's one of the things
I agree.
because I'm almost through rewatching season 1, and then I'm gonna go right into season 2 because I want to not have the break we had.
Yeah.
So I can, reevaluate everything. But I just was struck again by how much I love the music from season 1.
Yeah. That was something that I felt was missing for me too in the later seasons.
I mean, I think that the music in the other 2 seasons was good,
Yeah.
but we don't have the music like from the first dance that was so incredible. The music from
that
when
ball
Esther
at the end of the first episode.
Reins. Yeah. And when Esther takes the reins, and we don't have the music from, the music that they played every time that Sydney and his friends were walking along or doing anything, coming to town, going to town, leaving. So that was, I mean, a lot of it is because I've watched it so much. I realize that, but the tenor is different
exactly.
And it's not bad. It's just more sophisticated. And one of the things I loved about season 1, it was a little bit more folksy, not cityfied, and it's kind of appropriate that the music changed.
Yeah, as he tried to make it fashionable.
Right. Yeah. And so the level of sophistication came up, which is not inappropriate. It's just I miss the other. That's all. Right.
Yeah. All right. Maria Roseman says, love your recaps and insight in each episode. Thank you very much. There's a lot of people saying that they hope that Edward had a redemption arc. And part of me is sad we didn't see a full redemption in Edward, but part of me is also glad that they gave us the start. And so like I can play it out in my head how it would go. I kind of like doing that too.
Yes. Now we just need to see Jack Fox in another series where he is a good guy.
Yes.
Although I've heard many actors say that the bad guy parts are so much more fun to play. But
yes.
Well, we love Jack Fox.
We
just
do.
Don't like Edward.
And even that, it's just a testament to how good Jack Fox plays that, because in the first season we were conflicted.
Yeah.
Like he was funny. We wanted to like him. And he was called a charm. He called himself, what did he call a lovable cat is what he called himself?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And the more I watched it, the more I saw how abusive he was. But season 2 and 3, I mean, it just took like a deep dive. So we'll see. I think I'll create a story in my head. Maybe that's what I'll do in the 2 weeks. Maybe Janice and I will create our own script for potential season 4 in our break that we have coming up.
In 2 weeks. Yeah.
Denise Sayer, who is going to be with us on our next episode. She says, you have so much more strength than I do, given the way Charlotte told Alexander at the season 2 ending that she had resolved to leave. It makes sense that he says to Leo, that was my perception. Ralph's insecurity at the beginning in this world and losing Charlotte and seeing a Charlotte that he doesn't recognize or know is so apparent. Yeah. I mean, I think they were trying to draw that line with that. I think that was very intentional, because that's the only way we'd hypothesize. That's not a word. Hypothesized.
There you go.
Jeez. I was recording on my other podcast and I kept saying files have been charged, and I couldn't. I could not.
As opposed to charges have been filed.
Yes.
Yeah.
It took me like a full minute to understand what I knew. It sounded wrong, but I couldn't figure out why it was wrong. But yeah, we had hypothesized at the end of season 2 how Ralph and Charlotte were going to break up, and I think that they took every opportunity to highlight how ill-suited they were for each other in season 3.
Right. Yeah.
They had
definitely.
here, vocals. I'm so sorry. She says the English or UK version of bocce ball is called bowls or bowls, lawn bowling to them. I did not know that. I didn't know that
Me
was the
either.
same thing. They are Roman based and the exact same game. Didn't know that.
Learn something new every day. Thank you for sharing.
There's a comedian that I like. He's a UK comedian or British comedian, and his name is Michael. Can't remember his last name offhand, but he's everywhere. He's hilarious. He's phenomenal. And he was on a show talking about the difference between American English and normal English. And he was saying that Americans like to think they talk English, but they don't. And how we've had to alter the American English language to be instructional. Like instead of horse riding, it's horseback riding. So we know how we're riding it. Instead of glasses, it's eyeglasses. So we know where they go.
Oh, that's funny.
I'll have to send you a link to that. But that reminds me of that because I had no idea that bocce ball and lawn bowling were different. But lawn bowling sounds way more like, oh, I'm telling you how to do it in the name. Bocce ball is more of a mystery. Kim Otterbeck, who has been a faithful member of our show since the beginning, she wrote on there, "Thank you, ladies, and we appreciate you. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate you too, Kim, and your participation in our groups, and you've been on most of our lives, and we appreciate you as well." She says, "I also don't think Rolf is going to end up a very nice person." Ooh, how do you feel about that now, Kim? Do you still think
what did she say? She doesn't think Ralph is going to end up being a very nice person?
Yes.
Yeah, he's I'm glad they didn't write him as being mean or something, because for one thing, he's going back to Willingdon and she's not, you know.
It was just that one episode where he showed up. He's like, "I've come to take you home." And like that, he said some things in there that I was like, no, I'm not going to like you. But he was just insecurity and he redeemed himself from that.
Right.
He also said Edward will get his comeuppance one way or the other. Did he though?
Oh, yeah.
Did he?
Well, yeah.
I think that they gave him the perfect depiction of grace.
Yeah.
That's what Edward got. He didn't deserve to get off as easy as he did. He got the utmost grace.
Yeah, his intentions were so bad towards Esther that, and if it wasn't for Clara, he would have succeeded, I think. And I'm just like, that's pretty unforgivable what he did. I mean, not, although he at least came around when it came to Augusta. And so he redeemed himself a little bit there.
Yeah.
And for him being a vicar may be
just the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
especially
true.
If he's just an assistant vicar and not.
Oh man, I hope so.
Although Reverend Hanks is not exactly a glowing example, so it'd be interesting to see how the two of them do together.
More sermons on flowers that need to be plucked that are right up Edward's alley. Jeez. And it is true that, repentance is how you gain grace. And I think he was repentant at least a little bit to receive that. So,
Yep.
Jay says that Ralph doesn't do anything to endear himself to the audience or his new acquaintances. He oozes insecurities, lack of confidence. He's a polite jerk. And I do agree with that to an extent because he is very polite and he said some jerky things. He wasn't constantly that way though.
Well, and you're reading the questions from just episode 1.
Episode 1, yep.
So at this point, they had the questioner hasn't seen any more of Ralph. So at that point, he was a typical country bumpkin.
Exactly. And that's Susie Varga defended Ralph in this. And she replied to that Ralph is not a jerk and there's nothing wrong with him. He is simple, sweet, decent, not educated, not sophisticated country boy who surely works his butt off. He has been lied to and he was used as a rebound after Charlotte got her heart broken. I don't think he was lied to necessarily. I mean, a lie of omission, yes, but
assumptions were made and weren't corrected.
Exactly. And he wasn't used as a rebound either. I don't agree with that. This was something that was planned. He was plan A for Charlotte.
And she just fell back into that situation.
Exactly. And I think that when she came home, her dad, we are given the idea in season 3, and of course this is beyond episode 1, but we're given the idea in season 3 that her dad basically said, okay, it's time now. You're going to get married to him now because you did what you did. You didn't find it. So we're going to marry Ralph now. So I don't think he was used as a rebound. I think that was just the way things went. But she
sort of like, you had your great adventure. Now you're going to settle down.
Exactly. Yes. And she said he was used as a rebound after Charlotte got her heart broken by the 2 handsome, smoldering guys you support so much. that is a strong statement. I mean, it's not entirely wrong. And I don't think, and this is the reason I supported it so much, is because I don't think we said this. I don't think Ralph knew her. And that was evidenced in episode 1. What he even said to Lady Susan, I don't recognize her here. He doesn't know her. So
he knows one aspect of her.
Exactly.
And that's it. And it's not allowed to change in his head,
Yeah. And she went on to say, I am team Alexander Colbourne, by the way, but poor Ralph doesn't deserve this. She shouldn't have let him on. I think the times back then, it wasn't so much leading them on. I mean, there was arranged marriages all the time back then. So it wasn't, and I don't think Charlotte had any intention of ever negating that relationship. I truly don't. I think that up until the last 2 episodes, she was going through with this marriage, and she was going to be content, and she was going to be a good wife, and she was going to stay in Willingdon.
Right.
So I don't think she let him on. I think that he started to realize, I don't want what you want. And I don't want this second choice.
I can see how the writer felt that way, because at the time, we know she's going to get his happily ever after, that we've been promised that. We don't know how it's going to come about.
Mm-hmm.
And we, Ralph is ignorant. But I can see why they wrote what they did.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was any intentional leading him on.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. And
it may have been the result, but
I do agree though that Ralph got like the vitriol of the fandom. Like he
poor guy,
was not liked, and he was nice. And I felt, especially if this is going off of just episode 1, when he brought her that Keats book. I remember saying when we did a recap, okay, he did a nice thing, and I think I like him now. And I even remember saying, I'm sad that they're making him likable, because I don't want to like him and get invested in him. I don't want him to be heartbroken. So
right. And honestly, in a different role, people would be drooling over Ralph. He's a good-looking actor.
Mm-hmm. He was just, as you said, a country bumpkin. He just wanted the quiet, simple life that he had been raised to know was his. That's it.
Right. And that's right.
Mm-hmm. Reno Little says, my question is, and I had this question too. Season 1, Tom and Mary Parker had 4 kids, 2 girls, a young boy, and a baby boy. I noticed in season 2 and 3, the Parkers only show 3, not a baby or toddler. That I did notice that too. Of course, there's a number of reasons why the baby might not have been shown. He could have been with the governess or the nanny or the wet nurse or whatever. There could have been reasons for it. We don't know. I don't know exactly how much time has passed. I know it was 9 months from the end of season 1 to season 2, the start of season 2. Right. But I don't know how much time passed in season 2, and I don't know how much time passed in season 3.
Right. And the other part is that I feel the same way. It's like it would have helped if they had at least mentioned baby James, during seasons 2 and 3. Even if he was absent or with a nanny or whatever, if they had just mentioned him. Yeah. And one of the things another thing I liked about season 1 is how much we saw the kids, which was not the case in seasons 2 and 3.
Agreed. Yeah, they were very rarely even in a scene.
Yeah. They were at the wedding.
They were, yes, they were. And they were there when the Parker said goodbye to Charlotte.
Right.
They were there. Yeah. They were there a couple other times, but they were no attention was drawn to them at all. I just happened to see them there with the rest of the Parkers.
Right. They were in the background.
Mm-hmm. Toby says, I love the comedy in season 2 and 3, and the new characters in season 3 are great additions to the story. I agree with that. I do sort of wish we had less introductions in season 3, because I wanted to build off of who we got in season 2, but I do love the people we got in season 3 though. He says, I feel that Ralph is a good, decent man, but he is not the right man for Charlotte. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think he loves her, but she's marrying him out of duty. I totally understand her deciding to opt out of love and marry Ralph. I'm looking forward to Colbourne's transformation. And this has been like, we have been asked, and I know we answered this on the live, but there are like 4 different people asking, Janice, how do you feel about Colbourne now? And this guy, Toby says he's looking forward to Colbourne's transformation. So one more time for those in the back, Janice, how do you feel about Alexander Colbourne now?
Now I love him.
Yay.
Now he's worthy of Charlotte. He came
Yes.
around.
And he did so many good things. So many good
Yeah,
things.
he did. I mean, he stood up for the town. We found out that he was the one that required a school to be built,
Mhm.
you know, and that he was interested in their education. And he obviously was not put off by strong women.
Exactly. Oh, on our episode 1 recap, Lily France put a link in there, and it's a compilation of the Sanditon dances.
Oh,
So if you want to see those, check that link out. She said it's so beautiful and brought tears to my eyes. Enjoy.
can you share it on this episode?
I will try to
when
remember
you
to
post
do that.
it?
Yes.
Because yeah, that would be awesome.
And I think, as we've talked about several times, the dancing is so beautiful in this show. And it's, I mean, back then too, that was how you got close to somebody, was the dancing, where you could have a little touch here or a little touch there and it was okay. And
Right.
Reno said, and I actually heard this from a lot of people, I have passport and stayed up until 2 a.m. even though I need to be online for work at 7 a.m. Well worth it, and not a peep from me. Jay said she was up until 4 a.m. watching it. Nina said, me too. I've watched season 3 twice. Christiane said, me too. I binge watched because I couldn't wait to see the end. And Michelle said, I was so happy they posted an hour early. Otherwise, I might not have made it to 3 a.m. Miss November Tuesday said, well worth it. And then she said, my favorite line from Lydia is, do be quick with your compliments, mother. You'll make me conceited. Or something like that. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Lydia. Well, but do we meet her in episode 1? I guess we do.
I think we meet them coming into town in the carriage in episode 1.
Right. Yeah, we do.
Mm-hmm. All right. So there's more comments on our episode 1, but we're going to move on to episode 2 since, we don't want this to be a 4-hour one. So, V Brown again is our first commenter on our episode 2 recap. She says, Samuel was definitely my favorite new character this season. You're very right about how observant he is and how he uses that skill to help people. I don't even think I could pick a favorite of the new additions. I love Samuel. I also love Lydia. I know who my least favorite is, and that's the mom, Lady Montrose.
Oh, yeah. Well, what a great actress. She does such a great job of playing it.
Mm-hmm.
They showed some behind the scenes stuff, and she obviously is a fun person.
Yep.
That actress. But yeah, the character was
awful.
Yeah.
But probably even she had those redeeming moments, like when she talked to Harry and she started to cry when she talked about him possibly going to the gallows, like that. She had those moments where it was like, okay, well, I don't hate you.
Well, that's because Justin is doing a very good job of writing, and the rest of the writers, of writing well-rounded characters.
Yes. He's giving them complexity, so there is no character in Sanditon that's one note. There's no character that you can definitively say, I hate everything about them. You can't. And I think that he's really bringing a reality to it by the way he wrote the characters on season 2 and 3, because they have, even Lockhart, he had some redeemable things about him, but then he was despicable. So it's not everything is so cut and dry. It's not so black and white. And I like that he brought that in.
Well, I have to agree. And even though it was just on season 2, I love Samuel.
Yes, I do.
He was my favorite new character, and the way he interacted with both girls, but especially Leo. Yeah. And then with Lady Susan. Yeah.
The first meeting he had with Leo, he had my heart. Samuel did.
Yeah.
Just jumped right into acting along with her. And I just love that. If you're kind to the people I love, then you have my love in return.
Right.
It took me a minute to place him because I've seen him in something else. And it took until like episode 2 or 3. And like I watched each of those twice before I realized he was in Once Upon a Time.
And I never saw it, but I'm gonna have to go watch it now
He
because
played
he was
King
in it.
Arthur.
That's what I looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him in something too, but I don't know what it was.
It took me forever. And even there, he plays a really complex character he's good, but he's got some really despicable things about him. And it's just well done. Manola says, hi, I noticed also how Colbourne pretended to be all smiles when he met Charlotte at the tea house and then turned around with a painful expression. He was suffering so much. I think he did that a lot until he had Charlotte for certain. He was in pain every time he was near her, but he was near her because he loved her. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. And as we mentioned, actually, I think last time, he had redeemed himself in my eyes when he overheard Charlotte's conversation about an attorney for Georgiana and went out and got his brother to come and help.
Agreed. Yep. It was that was the moment for me that he realized, or he started to put her above everything else. And he just knew that even if he couldn't have her, he would do what it took to help her and to do things that would make her happy because he just wanted her happy.
Yeah.
Julie Garnay says, I just don't understand how Colbourne can speak to Charlotte, but not explain why he let her go in season 2. I see he's trying to show he cares for her by helping her friend Georgiana and attending social gatherings. I hope he can somehow tell her he regrets his decision. She's so sad so far. Colbourne and Charlotte both give each other those looks of, I still love you, but what can we do? And V Brown said, I agree. He needs to apologize for the way he ended things and explain why. And maybe that does happen after they're married, or maybe Charlotte just gets it. And maybe that's why they work. I don't know. But she said, in many ways, I think he actually did need to take some time to get his head straight and to focus on connecting with the girls and learning to be emotionally open with them before he could focus on romance. 100% agree with that. And she said, now that he's healed the relationship with the daughter and niece and this season with his brother, I think he's better able to be a good suitor husband to Charlotte than he was last season. Absolutely agree. It had to happen.
And a lot of it is that he proved he had a changed heart by his actions, even if he didn't get into a big explanation. But he had said before that you don't want to be around me. She understood that he had a really bad opinion of himself because of what had happened with his first wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Susan Wilson is another one of our faithful followers who's been with us since the beginning. She's been on all of our lives. We love talking with Susan. She commented on here, loved episode 2. My favorite moment was the Hayborn hand touch. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Every time they touched, I preferred the hand touch to the kiss on the cliff. There was so much tension and it was so much more intimate. And there was so much more said with that single hand touch than it was with anything else. Because it was still them withholding so much, but unable. It was almost like it was this volcano ready to erupt and they had to let out just a little bit of tension to keep it bottled up. And so
I think too, they were moved by the performance, the musical performance, and that actress was really good. That, performed in spite of the fact that the king was not there.
Yep, exactly. Reno goes on to say, in relation to that, she says, Reverend H to me is very creepy. I have trouble allowing myself to find kind words to describe him. That song that was sung in this episode was one of a woman's heartbreak, which I thought was pivotal for Lady Susan, with the king not appearing for the event. Interesting how Samuel picked up on this. Coming back to episode 1, when Samuel comes to Hayward Park, Mrs. Wheatley was not overly warm to him. I wonder why. Well, I think we find that out later on when we find out more of the details of Samuel's absence, that he left it all to his younger brother and he left. Right. And Alexander was probably not ready to do it. And she watched Alexander struggle and beat himself up and hold himself to a standard that was impossible to reach. And so I think that was probably what it was.
And basically Samuel abdicated his responsibility as the first son.
Yeah.
And then it fell on Colbourne's shoulders to take it on. And she knew all of that. So it's understandable.
Exactly. Here's something I didn't realize. I didn't catch this. Maybe I'm going to have to catch it in a rewatch. But Nina Klein says there was a very little vignette before the concert where Charlotte mirrors Xander's nervous habit of twisting his pinky. He sees her doing that and her looking back at him. I loved it. I did not catch that.
Interesting. Yeah, I have to look at that again.
Huh.
You people are good.
I know. Well, I wonder, Nina, how many times did you watch that episode to see that? I feel like that's how we got with season 1 when we were doing all of our recaps and the breakdowns, because I remember there was a time when we couldn't cut down our episodes below 2 hours because we were talking about every single detail.
Yep.
Denise said, I'm so glad you like both Lydia and Harry. I feel like they both have enormous amount of empathy despite or because of their mother's teachings. I don't think there's anything not to like about Lydia and Harry. I think they're both hilarious and sarcastic and broken. And it's numerous other things. She says, regarding Ralph's letter and the flower from the hedgerow, I had a flashback to North and South and John's flower from the hedgerow for Margaret. Yes. That was my thought too. I'm so glad somebody else brought that up. Did you see that movie?
Yeah. No, and I agree. Yes.
I have to say, I read the book too, and the book made me so mad with how it ended. It just abrupt end. Like, no, I want more.
Oh, I didn't read the book.
North and South was another one where it ended so abruptly that yes, there's an ending there. You know what's going to happen, but it left you at the best part, and you didn't get to see the rest of it. So that was when I binge watched over and over and over and over and over again because it wasn't complete for me.
Right. Wow.
I thought when she received that letter, that was immediately where I flashed back to, and it kind of made me sad that she just, because the look on Charlotte's face when she read the letter, it wasn't happiness. It was almost like she was devastated. Stephanie Bernier says, hi, I can't. Oh, she says this on episode 2. She said, hi, I can't wait to see your recap of episode 3 because I think that last scene must have surprised you in a good way. It did. Eileen Carroll says, idea for a finale discussion, unfinished business. I have so many unanswered questions and hopes for spinoffs. All the characters have so much depth and I want more. Also can't tell the difference between Easter eggs and purely clever details. I think the Easter eggs, I always think, are giving you an indication of what's coming. And I think the clever details are just things they put in there to see if you notice. That's how I see them. But yeah, I think that's a great idea for a discussion. That might have to be something put in there. But again, Janice and I are going to write a whole bunch of stories in our break. So we'll have all the answers for all of these when we come back.
And we're open to everybody else's as well.
Exactly. Know that I'm kidding. And there's a very real chance we may not come back with anything. I might try, but
thoughts maybe, but yeah. Exactly. I like the unfinished business. That would be fun to go through that.
Right?
Yeah, very, very good. Yeah. Great idea.
Steve Krashini says, I'm sorry if I said your last name wrong, says, I was a big Charlotte Sydney fan, and that brought me into the series in the first season. But the Charlotte Colbourne arrangement for season 2, in my opinion, dragged the second season down and is anticlimactic with the season, with the endless side glances, odd conversations, and the kiss at the end of episode 3. You wrote that on episode 2 recap. Spoiler. I think the pairing of Edward and Augusta is brilliant, as it matches 2 characters that are schemers. And now they're trying to work through who's scheming who, especially as they go through changes, trying to leave their negative characters behind and realizing they do care for each other. I don't agree that it dragged the second season down. I think it was necessary. They had to build it. That's season 2. And we talked about this when we were doing our recaps. Season 2 largely was building up to the final season. They had to put so many things in place to either alter what their original plan was post season 1, because they didn't want Charlotte to end up with anybody but Sydney, but they had to redirect, they had to rearrange, and to introduce someone new, they had to build it up. They had to make us see this. So it almost had to mirror season 1 in a way. And all the other characters also, they had to be built up to what's going to be final in season 3. I think it wasn't a filler season, but it was a necessary season in order to give us the final.
There was, I agree with you. And I think that so you could think of seasons 2 and 3 as one long 12 episode season. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of how they put it together, with a gap in the middle, because of course Sanditon is supposed to be more of a summer place. And I don't think that one duplicated the other. I think that the thing I appreciate about it is each show and each episode was kind of distinct. The only event that gets repeated is Lady Denham falls ill and Mary falls ill.
Yeah. And
those are the
Charlotte ended the season heartbroken.
right, for two different reasons, but
Exactly.
yes, yeah. So there is that repetition.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, would I
They were
like to?
necessary though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, what would have brought Tom around if it wasn't for Mary's
Mm-hmm.
illness? And what would have gotten Charlotte to go back home and go along with the engagement to Ralph if it wasn't for her heartbreak at the end of season two?
Exactly.
So a lot of, you have to write things so that there's a reason why characters do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was, but I understand the point she's making too.
Yeah. And I think too that I think season 3, I mean, she was engaged to somebody else and he was realizing that, okay, she's moved on. I need to find someone else. They didn't have another choice but the sidelong glances. And I think that made the final more poignant because we sat there and watched how desperately they loved each other, how they were still trying to make each other happy, how they were still there for each other, even though they couldn't be together or they thought they couldn't be together. I was there for that. I thought the tension built nicely in that relationship.
Yeah. The one thing that I would like to have seen differently is the wedding scene, and the party afterwards. I would have loved some dialogue.
Yeah.
It was all just, music and scenes, and there wasn't any. I would have loved some more dialogue, but that probably would have lasted then 2 more episodes.
And her
Or
family.
at least 2 more hours. They could have finished with a 2-hour show. And their family. Yeah. I really missed having the family there. At least Allison and
Declan,
Carter and
Fraser.
Fraser. Why did I say Carter? Fraser. Yes, definitely Allison and Fraser, and also to have at least her mother and father there. But obviously either they didn't have the budget for it or the actors weren't available.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's always a reason, even if it's, I forgot what her original name was.
Yeah,
I'm never not going to be salty about that.
Yeah, that is one thing that's going to make the transition going right from season 1 into 2 and 3 very difficult. Wait a minute.
Yes. And the other thing too is that I do agree with you on this though. And this is something I wish they would have done a little different. Of course, there's budget constraints, there's time constraints, there's what the actors have going on. But I would have liked the very final episode to be a 2-hour episode because it did seem like they had a lot. And I remember talking about this on the episode 5 recap. It felt like they had so much to accomplish in episode 6. And they did.
Yeah.
They did accomplish it, but I would have liked it to have been a little more drawn out. So it didn't feel like so in the beginning, we're not here. Okay, now we're here. And I just would have liked it. It
would be interesting to find out if they actually did have originally written conversations for the wedding, and if they had, and even if they filmed them and then ended up having to edit it differently.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder about that.
I had a thought the other night when I was watching one of the episodes, and that is one of the people I'd love to see us interview. Well, 2 of the people, but Belinda and the gal who started it at Republican Pictures, and also the person from PBS whose name escapes me at the moment, that were responsible, and to hear their version of the story. I mean, we heard a little bit of it on that broadcast that they did with Justin before season 2 came out. But I would love to interview them and ask them about their journey of putting the last 2 seasons on and how they feel it came out, and things they would like to see differently. And it would just be, I'd love that interview.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I would love that too. Reno Little went on to say, Tom Parker, Tom is Tom, keep this in mind. I'm guessing Reno was not a Tom Parker fan. Just a hunch. There was Julianne wrote on our episode 2 recap. I didn't watch season 1. What happened to Lady Susan's name? Thanks. We aren't going to talk about that.
Well, in case you haven't heard, though, we should say, so her name in season 1 was Lady Worcester, and in season 2 is De Clement, which is a French. Thank you. Anyway, it was very different last
It's
name.
not even remotely similar. One is very French and one is very British.
Yes. And the only reason we know what happened is because thankfully Paula Byrne told us.
Yep.
And she was privy to the scripts. And
Mm-hmm.
she said that they just forgot. Now, okay. Okay.
And I think the reason that's so disappointing is because if you have to change so much of what you would hope to see in season 1 to season 2, wouldn't you read the season 1 scripts as a refresher? But I think because the show is so good, I think we hold them to an impossibly high standard of, no, you don't get to make mistakes. You don't get to be human here. We love this show and you're going to love it like we do. You're going to be obsessive like we are, but that's an impossible standard to hold them to. They're human. I'm still mad about it, but they're human.
And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the fact that Justin didn't write episode 8, which is 7. Oh, he did write 7. Never mind. That's when we learned her last name. We don't learn it in episode 6. We learn it in 7.
At the regatta, just before the regatta.
He did write it. Come on, Justin.
Anyway. That the fandom is never going to let him hear the end of it either.
No, and like I said at the time that I saw that post by Paula Byrne, you and I would have been happy to have been continuity, observers, to make sure that things were done correctly. But well.
Here's how benevolent and generous Janice and I are. The next time you have a project, go ahead and send us the script. And we'll read it obsessively and we'll walk along this with you the whole way. We'll just tell you, nope, that's not how it went. We are willing to do that for free. Even we will do that.
Yeah, that's right.
Watch us make way more mistakes than they made.
Yeah.
Reno said Charlotte and Alexander hand touching during the concert. Was that forbidden to do? Yes. You didn't show that kind of intimate unless you were married to that or engaged to that person. And even then, sometimes physical touch in public was the same effect of can't show an ankle, can't show a thigh, or well, certainly not a thigh, but I mean a calf. Can't show even like sometimes it was less stringent in Regency times, but there was a point in time when even showing a wrist was too much. So by this point, they were a little gone beyond that, but it was the sense of being intimately touching the opposite sex. It was a no-no. And Audrey responded that yes, especially since Charlotte is engaged to marry another. And Karen said, even during the time period, they were taking a big chance. It wasn't as scandalous as say kissing or cuddling or hugging or something like that, but it was still something it was against etiquette. And it was not something that was done in Regency times unless you were engaged to them. And even then it was there was a very quick leap from holding hands to doing, they must be doing so much more if they're holding hands.
Right. And the truth of the matter, they could get away with it because it was the end of the concert. Everybody was so emotional and distracted. And you could claim that they just rushed against each other. I mean, but the truth of the matter is, no matter what, the entire series, there were many times when convention was not abided with, I mean, the fact that Charlotte and Sydney walked up on the cliffside by themselves, that would not have happened.
Yeah.
At least I'm not sure it wouldn't have happened, just it would not have been accepted.
And in the country, rules were a little looser too. It wasn't like they were in London where they would be out in public, although typically a woman wouldn't be in. I think the ruling was women couldn't be in an enclosed space with a man without a chaperone because there had to be a witness. But if you're out in public with the opposite sex, it was okay because you could be seen by other people.
Right.
But certainly walking through the woods or walking through the countryside alone.
Yeah.
That would be something like, hey, what's going on there? And I think,
but also, even like when Colbourne and Charlotte were at the house and he was explaining what happened.
Yeah.
There were many violations of etiquette from the time.
And I don't think, and we're not saying either that was a misstep on the writer's part. They did that on purpose.
Right.
They were intentionally. That's why the hand-holding thing was such a big moment in Sanditon, because it was not something that would have been seen as proper. It was not something that would have been seen as okay to do. They just could not help themselves. Their care for each other, the love for each other was so deep, they could not help it. And that was the whole point. I think if it was something that was normally done, it wouldn't have been as big of an impact. It wouldn't have been a big deal at all. But that's why it was written that way. It was because it was super impactful and it was a big deal.
And just because that's what etiquette said doesn't mean everybody abided by it. Let's face it.
All right, so let's move on to episode 3. Susan says, thank you for the breakdown. My favorite. Oh, I like that she's doing this in all these. My favorite line is, stay, make a life with me. Oh, that was a good line. That was a good line.
It was. Yeah.
And delivered with all the smolder that Ben Lloyd Hughes could muster.
Yeah. Yeah. And passion. Yeah.
Did you say he redeemed himself with that?
Yeah. That he redeemed himself with that whole scene where he found her and said what, and she says, why did you wait till now? I mean, why did you take so long? And of course he regrets it, but she's engaged and she's trying to, and I love that when he is so passionate towards her and so obviously loving her, he didn't kiss her, she kissed him. I mean, she's the one who walks up to him, and because she's so moved by what he's saying, and then she remembers herself, as it were.
Yep. Drops that book.
Yep.
Stephanie Bernier says in episode 3, I liked all the Mrs. Wheatley scenes because we learned more about her. And this is one thing, looking back on the recaps, we tried to give you such an extensive view. We didn't talk about Mrs. Wheatley nearly enough as I went back and edited them.
Right. Yes, we didn't. And I think we need I'd like to see us do an episode where we talk specifically about her and Georgiana's interaction with her, and then Georgiana's mother, and would like to have seen even more of all of those characters.
Yep. I agree. And I think that might be the first one that we do. And that. Rose said, last season, Augusta couldn't wait to be out in society, and this season, after only a short time, she hates it. It's so incongruous. I think it's not that she didn't want to be out in society. It's that she didn't like being on the marriage mart. I think she liked going to because remember in season 2, I just said member instead of remember in season 2, she was talking about how she would watch her mother get ready with the pearls and the dresses. And that's what she associated being out with, was what she would help her mother to do. And I think that she wanted to be out to kind of feel more connected to her mom. She didn't necessarily want to be in the marriage mart, but her issue that we see in season 3, all throughout season 3 with being out in society, is Xander continually trying to get her to marry somebody and trying to match up men. And that's what she didn't like. She didn't like the marriage mart, which I think we could have assumed that from her behavior in season 2, that she's her own person. She doesn't want to do that. But she just wanted to experience what her mother experienced. She wanted to have that connection to her mom of the balls and the dancing and the dressing.
Yeah, exactly. Go to the balls and all of that. So I guess that's another, now that I have to take back what I said earlier, because I hadn't thought about this. Her being out on, being encouraged to find a husband to marry is like Georgiana being encouraged to marry. I mean, that we don't see that really with Charlotte, that she's being sort of promoted in that way. But we definitely, that storyline is repeated for those two characters, Georgiana and Augusta.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was done out of love too, because they were trying to protect them by getting them to do that. And drawing the connection to Georgiana is accurate because Augusta just came into her inheritance.
Right.
So
was Elda. Yeah, that's right. She would.
Reno said season 2 ending. I'm convinced Alexander was going to propose to Charlotte. However, she stopped him, as she did at the cliff scene. And Susie Vargas said, I love Susie Vargas' comments, but she comments on almost everyone. She said, well, lesson learned. If you want to propose to the love of your life, don't tell her your house misses her. Exactly. Boy, is that correct.
Yeah. And don't tell her that, you're the boss, and I can't be seen acting this way, and and
maybe put your own emotions into it, just thinking. Catherine Begley, who is also she's very active in our Facebook group and has been on our engaging with our podcast for a while now. She says, I'm curious what Maureen and Janice think about the dynamic between Alexander and Lady Lydia, as you don't discuss this in your recap for this episode. I think we did by the end to kind of discuss them, not as in depth, but I do think that she amused him in the same way she amuses us. I think that he got along with her. I think that they were friendly. I think he enjoyed her company from a friend standpoint because she made him laugh. And we could see that. She made him smile. She made him laugh. They would joke. But I think because she was already in love with someone else, there wasn't any danger for Alexander there. So he could just be free.
And not to mention that she wouldn't have known how to interact with him if it wasn't for Charlotte.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think she was okay with doing that because it was just a pretense for her.
Right. It distracted her mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's those two were also being promoted for marriage by their mother.
Yep.
Or their guardian or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Catherine also went on to say that we asked viewers of the Chronicles podcast for Sanditon to offer ideas for possible future podcasts. And she said, these are 4 she thought about. Another Parallels and Ironies one, which, yes, that's on the docket because Janice is very good at those and we like doing those. Across season 3 and possibly across the Sanditon series. I think we're going to have to do, since we have all 3, I think we have to do it amongst all of them. And we'll switch it up of, look at this from 2 to 3 and look at this from 3 to 1, that sort of thing. Also, another one is an exploration of the roles the men in Charlotte's life have played in her life journey, including but not exclusively her love interests. I think that's a good idea. Like her dad, Tom, Arthur, Reverend Hankins. Another idea is the relationships among siblings in Sanditon, brothers, sisters, brothers. And the last one is an exploration of taboo subjects and how they play out in the series through an Austen lens. I like that one a lot. Oh, this is another thing that I wanted to see different. And Reno brings this up. And she's not the only one to bring this up either. I think it was brought up in our Facebook group. She said, has Alexander ever called Charlotte by her first name? I only thought it as Miss Haywood. He doesn't. And I wish he would in those heated moments when he's declaring, like on the cliff top. I wish he would have called her Charlotte there. But because it's that, yes, he's trying to be a gentleman, but you just kissed her. So that kind of flew out the window there. Could you have not have said Charlotte when she was turning to walk away? Something. I would have liked to hear him call her Charlotte.
Well, and she didn't call him Xander or Alexander or, just like she never called Sydney. She talked about him as Sydney with Mary, but she never called, and with Georgiana. And Georgiana always called him Sydney, and vice versa. He calls her Georgiana. But no, I agree. I would love to have had him say that.
Although I did love hearing him
cut it out of the wedding.
Maybe because there was no dialogue really at the wedding either, except for when they were doing their vows.
Right.
And that wasn't complete. But I did love hearing him call her Mrs. Colbourne. I liked that.
Yes.
That was nice. Heather C says, how do you know Tom cares for Georgiana? I believe Tom only cares about things that directly affect his plans and finances. I suspect Tom knows that Mary provides opportunities to him to be financially stable. Tom has never acted magnanimously and has never shown any ability to be successful on his own. I think he does care for Georgiana. I think that I think he's constantly trying to build. I think he's constantly trying to better it. Yes, it's about making money for the town, but we can see at the end of episode 2 or season 1, and also throughout season 2, that he is trying to make a life for his family. He's trying to keep his family in the position that they have. He's trying to make sure that his wife and his children are afforded the luxuries that they've been afforded. It's not just about him specifically. He did make some mistakes. He was very selfish in season 1, and it was out of panic. We see that in season 1 when he's sitting by the fireplace, and you could see he's clearly distraught, but he can't let anyone lead anyone on to believe that about him, because then they won't continue to help him. They won't continue to give him money and invest in the town. And he needs that. I think that Tom cares for Georgiana because he stands there with her, especially at the end of season 2 with Lockhart. He stands there with her and says, no, we're here for her and we're going to protect her. He's there with her when she signs the papers in episode 1. He does care. Tom is just a very analytical person. And he does even in season 3, try to get Rowley to abide by Mary's idea to move it somewhere else, but he's afraid. So when Tom makes this decision, he makes them out of fear, not because he's callous, not because he's he's a terrible person. He makes him out of fear because he sees how bad it got when he ran out of money. So he knows that he needs money. He knows that he has to keep it coming in. And so he makes this out of fear. That's why I think he's done that. Would I say he's magnanimous? No, not really. But I think that he's trying to do the best he can for the people.
Well, she was asking this right at the end of episode 3,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we haven't yet at that point in the season 3 seen him redeem himself when Mary gets sick, and then it's like having somebody hit him upside the head, right? Knocking some sense into him. Then he realizes what's really important and he comes around. So I understand where she's coming from, because at that point he was pretty frustrating. And at the end of season 2, though, he does really go. Mary is still, I'm sorry, the brains behind the operation, as it were. And Arthur is such a huge part of Tom's conscience. But he does put himself on the line with that card game and with challenging Lennox, and on behalf of not so much himself, but the people of Sanditon.
Yeah.
The shopkeepers.
And we see at the end of season 2, when Georgiana receives those letters from Sydney, he tries to help her figure this out. He's there for her. He tries to help her through it. He's with her on sending solicitors out. He's with her doing all that stuff. When she agrees to marry the Duke, he thinks it's because, Tom
in season 3, you're talking, right? Okay.
No, at the end of season 2, when she got the letters from Sydney.
Oh, right. You just moved on to the Duke.
I moved on to the next one.
That was in season 3.
And then when she got engaged to the Duke, it was more like, because even with Sydney and Charlotte, he didn't realize there was a love thing there. So when Sydney's like, hey, I'm marrying Eliza, Tom's like, yay. It wasn't because screw Charlotte. It was because he thought, of course this makes sense. And I think that was the same way with the Duke and Georgiana. Of course this makes sense, because this is why you get married. So I think that he does show that he does care for. And I think by episode 3, we had already seen Mary say, well, I don't think it should be there. And Tom brought that up to Raleigh, and Raleigh said no.
Right.
And so Tom is cowed by people who have more influence and more money and more power than he is, because he feels like he needs them.
But after episode 3, then he comes around in episode 5, and realizes what's important, and then he stands up to Raleigh.
Yeah, exactly. Thank goodness. Susie says too, he cares for most people because he has a good heart, but he does not know how to handle them. I would completely agree with that.
Yeah.
His head is in the clouds. It doesn't mean he only cares about money. He's just not quite there. I would even wager to say he doesn't care about money specifically. He cares about having this be sustainable. And for that, it requires money.
But up until he comes to his senses when Mary gets sick, up until then, he's going along with Raleigh and his grand plans, and he tries to talk him out of it, but he doesn't just stand up to him and say no.
Yeah.
And so, I totally understand where she's coming from with that comment.
Yeah, I do. Let's move on to episode 4. I'm realizing that we still have 3 more episodes to talk through here. We're going less and less as we go. But the comments increase every recap that we do. So I'm not reading through all of them. I'm sorry. V Brown says, one of the things that struck me in this episode was the very different ways Ralph and Colbourne reacted to hearing Charlotte's idea about the school. I agree. That was glaring. Right. Ralph immediately shoots the idea down because Charlotte is going to be too busy raising all their kids back in the village. But Colbourne immediately praises the idea. I agree. This was the episode where Ralph did a couple things that I thought, that's awfully presumptuous of you, dude. So
yes,
I agree.
He
with
did.
That.
Right. It'd be interesting to know if his future father-in-law, her father, encouraged him to go, well, go get Charlotte. It'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, I agree. All those little behind the scenes things that we don't get to see. Vanessa said, you did not remark on the conversation with Lady Montrose at the stables with Hannibal. What a ghastly woman she is. I pity both Lydia and Harry having such an overbearing mother. Both Harry and Lydia were very funny and entertaining. I love all the new characters. Samuel Colbourne was just wonderful and easy on the eyes. Even Raleigh Price was a great match for Lady D, and they both had some very funny lines. Oh, they did for sure.
Yeah.
Susie responded to that and said, Lady Montrose, while being ghastly and unbearable, does not have it easy. Her dead husband gambled away all their money, and her kids can roll their eyes at her all they want. Neither of them really wants to live in poverty. To be fair, the Duke's fate has been left unresolved. Very, very unrealistic. So, yeah, I agree with that. The conversation.
She was made the way she was by events.
Yeah, I think the reason that, and like we talked about, she was one who's not so cut and dry. She's my least favorite new addition, but I don't hate her. But by episode 5?
We're on now.
No, I know, but by episode 5, when she paid off Agnes, that was a moment I was like, yep, no, there's no excuse or benefit to that at all. None.
Right. And her son felt the same way.
Yep. Because Agnes didn't pose a threat to her. I mean, if Georgiana still married Harry, she still gets the money and the inheritance. It's just her influence is not singularly the only thing Georgiana's going to listen to. And that's what it is. She wanted to be the one to influence and tell Georgiana how to do everything. And that was what made me realize that it's not just that, I don't want to live in poverty, which is a force behind her getting her kids to marry people of means. But it goes, her personality is beyond that, where you can see that she just wants to control all of them. And she wants to make sure that she is the one who handles everything because she thinks she's right. So,
yeah.
Michelle says, it was interesting that Lady Susan says about the change in Charlotte for better or for worse. I think it was episode 1 at the dinner table. Yep. When she's talking to Ralph, and Ralph says something to the effect of not being able to say. I think that is telling. Yes, it was very telling. Okay, Delia says, listening to the Boston Sisters podcast, which I don't know what that is. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, it's part of, I know who she's talking about.
Okay. And they interviewed the script consultant for Sanditon, Dr. Sharon D. Johnson, and she said that Masterpiece wanted inclusion in their dramas, including Sanditon. Highly recommend listening to their Sanditon episodes. Great listen. Also, they interviewed Crystal Clark, Georgiana, another great episode from their podcast. So go ahead and listen. If you want more Sanditon content, look up the Boston Sisters podcast. They've got some stuff there. I think we kind of theorized that was why some of the scenes were playing out the way they played out, was because that's what they wanted, was more inclusion. I think that was fairly evident. Stephanie Bernier says, sometimes during episode 4, I feel like shaking Charlotte and saying, break off your engagement. You and Xander are in love. I really didn't appreciate her passivity, her self-effacement. Ralph seems so insecure that he keeps saying that he and Charlotte are not fit for Sanditon and that they are counting the days until their wedding as if to convince himself that everything is fine. However, I think by the end of the episode, he wants Charlotte to tell him the truth and to stop hiding things from him. I don't think he wants Charlotte to tell him the truth. I think he wanted Charlotte to say, you're right, I'll leave Sanditon for good and be with you. I think that's what he wanted to hear her say. Which is normal. That's not a dig at Ralph. I think he thought he was in love with her. Of course, that's what he would want to hear her say. Eileen gives us another link to, she says, if you do an episode on the town layout, buildings, costumes, or Easter eggs, here's a good behind the scenes video. She gives that on our episode 4 recap. So there's a good one that says that. She also said in another video that's linked under her comment, the actor that plays Arthur gives a tour, and I'm still confused. I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah, that one was the one that was done really towards the beginning of season 2.
I think so, yeah. If it's the one that I remember seeing, I think that's what it was. Delia says Austin can be adapted for modern times. I don't think any of us are saying that they can't. My issue with doing that is when you adapt it to modern times, but you leave it in Regency. Regency is not modern. Modern is modern. Like, you look at Clueless, that's a modern adaptation of Jane Austen. You look at some other things that are based off of Sense and Sensibility or Pride and Prejudice nowadays, that's modern interpretation of Austen. But to say we're going to take Regency and we're going to make Regency modern, we're going to leave everything else in Regency, we're going to hold everyone else to Regency standards except for this one storyline we're going to take out of it, that's when I have an issue with it. But I don't think they did that terribly here. I think that they made it like with Harry and Arthur. Did they put that in there? Yes, but I think the reason why it sort of fit here is because it wasn't like they were out in the open and saying all this stuff. I think where it went wrong was Georgiana saying, you deserve to love who you love and be with someone you love. It wouldn't have been that way. I think that was the only caveat there, but they made a point to say this is punishable by death. So they did sort of keep it. There were some things I felt that they pushed too modern, but overall, I think they did a fairly good job keeping in the Regency period. I don't know what your thoughts are on
I
that.
think what it was done was for a modern audience.
Yeah, exactly. Denise, I would love to read your next comment, but it is very long and I can't read through it on here. But we are going to be talking in person. I am reading them. So V Brown says you were right in comparing Edward to both Willoughby and Wickham. Wickham nearly gets a 15-year-old heiress to elope with him. Yep. And then woos a teenage heiress, Mary King. Yep. And elopes with the 15-year-old Lydia Bennet. Yeah. Wickham was not a good guy. And he did it just for kicks with Lydia because he clearly had no intention of marrying her. She had no money. She had nothing. Willoughby, like Edward, has a rich aunt, and he kisses up to her in order to have money. He romances 17-year-old Marianne. She says with no intention of marrying her, but I disagree with that. I think he wanted to marry Marianne, but he could not because he needed the money more than he wanted love. So yeah, Edward is an even mix between those. All right. The last comment on episode 4 is that Victoria P says that Ralph is a very possessive man. He was, but it was also out of insecurity. He could feel her slipping, so he thought he would work to grab her tighter, which was not what you do to keep somebody. But he was only doing it because he could feel her slipping, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think he could feel that she was not, he was worried she wasn't coming home.
Yes, exactly. All right, so we have 2 more to go here. And you guys really went at it on episode 5 recap. So many comments. I'm just going to pick a few. Oh, Stephanie Bernier says, in an interview in Decider, Rose said that Charlotte made the decision to break off her engagement to Ralph when she saw Alexander talking to Augusta in dad mode.
Yeah.
I read something about that.
Yes. That's, when he was, well, it was when they went to try and get her back.
Yep.
When she had run off with
Edward.
And so, and the fact that he changed his tone so completely from how he had treated the girls in season 2 at the beginning, and you could see what an effect she had had on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Charlotte didn't break up with Ralph. Ralph ended it for her.
He called it off. Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah Coleman said there was so much meaningful staring between Charlotte and Alexander in this episode. It was both agonizing and inspirational because it made me imagine what they really wanted to say. And I giggle every time you ladies bring up Ralph marrying a spare Haywood sister. I mean, he would help the family out, no?
That falls under the category when we're going to talk about unfinished business.
Yes. Which sister did he marry? Clearly not the 2 older ones. Okay. Toby said, thank you for your thoughts on episode 5. I'm excitedly waiting for the final episode, and I'm expecting a happy ending. I will miss Sanditon when it's finished. By the way, I live in Australia, and I believe I will be asleep when you do your live broadcast, but I will be with you in spirit.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Getting in Australia would be hard for the live.
I don't even know the time distance there. I know it's much farther than the UK, but okay. Julie said that I think the writing was genius, showing the parallels between Charlotte and Alexander and Augusta and Edward relationships and really how society looked upon marriage in general in the 1800s. Yeah. My 24-year-old daughter thought it was weird how much wisdom Charlotte, especially for Augusta, had in this episode. But I thought it was appropriate after everything she has been through with Sydney and Alexander. I also think Ralph was very slow to catch on that Charlotte belonged in Sanditon. I agree with that. She was different there, but she fit in so much better there than she did in Willingdon. She was attached to so many in this town and was so reluctant to leave. The slow burn over this last season for Charlotte and Alexander was necessary for the relationship to heal and ignite again. I agree. All right. Eileen says, thank you so much for hosting this enriching series. I feel like I've had a book club of friends in my kitchen since I subscribed. I love that. Oh, love it. Don't stop watching. We're going to bring up more. We're going to keep this book club going. The stories have become more nuanced and appreciation for Jane Austen has deepened. Oh, that's the highest compliment anyone could give me, is that this has helped cultivate your appreciation for Jane Austen. Yes, please. If fan enthusiasm brought back Sanditon for seasons 2 and 3, how can we as a community influence spin-offs, a Christmas special, or a movie like Downton. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they gave us what we wanted and it's done. I don't think they would do another one. I really, truly don't. But she would love to see a London spin-off of Georgiana, Agnes, and Otis that spans the Sons of Africa, British abolition, and Georgiana meeting Queen Victoria. Oh, that would be cool. That would be real cool. I'd like to see that. Spin-off of Augusta and Leo, running a residential girls' school. Yeah, those are all, I think those are a lot of things that Justin Young wanted to do too. Catherine Begley says, do you think that Charlotte would have called off her engagement had Ralph not raised the issue of their relationship with her at the end of episode 5? I think she might have. I think she didn't want to. I think it might have taken a little longer to break it off, but I think she would have in the end realized I can't do this. And it might have been Mary sick that would have done it. Watching Tom with Mary, I think would have put her in a place of, oh crap, I can't marry him.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think she was, I think we even talked about this when we went over the episode, but I think that she would have found a way to break it off.
Mm-hmm.
And because she realized it's what she said, and the dialogue said at one point was that she knew that's not what was right for her to continue with Ralph. It's just a blessing that he came to that revelation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was a lot of people who actually commented on that. I think there was several people that commented that question along the same lines that you just said right there. So again, there's a lot of comments on these posts. We aren't going over all of them. If you want to join the discussion even after this, go ahead and check out our YouTube page under the comment section, because there's a lot of people going back and forth and discussing. So we'll move on to our last recap, episode 6. V Brown, her coming in at the top of every one of our episodes, commenting. Good job. She says, I wish we had gotten to see Georgiana spend more time with her mother. I agree. I was kind of sad we only had her for the last 2 episodes, or episode and a half.
Yeah.
That scene on the couch, and you talked about this, that there was something you and I both noticed. The scene on the couch when G places her head on her mother's lap was just so lovely. And I felt like it was what G had been missing all along. Yes, 100%. I'm glad she apologized to everyone for being such a jerk since the trial.
Yeah.
Did she apologize to everyone, or did she just apologize to the Parkers?
She apologized to, well, all of her close friends, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Victoria P says, I will never say goodbye to Sanditon. Neither will we. There are rewatches, there are binges, there are character breakdowns. There's so much coming. Toby says, I have loved watching the series. Rose Williams as Charlotte has been a joy, as has Ben Lloyd Hughes. I liked how they paid homage to Jane Austen with the similar scenarios and characters in 2 and 3. I think it really hit me when Georgiana and Charlotte were saying goodbye, that in those days a goodbye could mean forever. Yeah.
Yes.
I've enjoyed listening to your analysis of each episode and character. Yeah, I think that's something that we brought up, is that the way they held hands, it was almost like they weren't going to see each other again unless there was a big event that drew them together. It took a lot to travel. It took a lot to see each other. It took a lot to go from one place to the other, especially if one's based in London. Although it doesn't seem like London and Sanditon are that far from each other, does it?
Well,
I know our geography is all messed up.
But yeah, it's a couple hours. It's at least in those days it would have been like a night's journey,
Mm-hmm.
A whole day's journey.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that she ended up marrying Otis and then wasn't that far.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Sorry, I got that all wrong. It's Charlotte that didn't go to Ireland.
Yeah.
That stayed in Sanditon.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I also did love that Georgiana married Otis, and they're going to be in London, which isn't that far from Sanditon.
Absolutely not far.
What I really like about it is the idea that was brought up about her and Otis doing the Sons of Africa and dealing with abolition, because you know that they're going to be fighting together for reform. And I that's something I would love to see play out.
Yeah. And the fact that they were at Charlotte's wedding, that was
Mm-hmm.
wonderful.
Yep, absolutely. See, it's the big things that bring them together. Reno says, I love the look on Mrs. Wheatley's face when she brought in Lady Susan to Samuel. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Wheatley just wants her people to be happy. That's what she wants. Erica Smith said, I know there'll not be a season 4, but a movie would be great. Jay Stipula agrees with that. V Brown says, thank you so much for all these great recaps, podcasts of Sanditon. I've really enjoyed them. KM said, I'd like to know who Lydia got engaged to and how she managed to form a relationship out of her mother's eye. I believe it was done by post. I mean, there wasn't really another way to communicate with someone far other than post, but I agree. I wanted to see who, that was one thing I did want to see that what I wasn't shown is who was she getting married to? How did she meet this guy? What's the back? It's like they teased us with it the whole season.
Maybe it's the person. See, I in my head, it was the person that she almost was engaged to before that her mother put a stop to. And maybe that's who she went to see when she went writing and not Colbourne.
I agree with that completely. I think that's exactly what it was. I just wanted to know the name and how they met and what his position was. Was he a worker or?
And you wanted to give your approval.
Yes, that's exactly it. I like Lydia. I wanted to make sure he was good enough for her. Nancy G says, I'm going to miss this series and these recaps. Well, we are going to keep bringing Sanditon, or at the very least, Jane Austen at you. Inde Brede says, I will miss Sanditon. We'll be wondering the family of the life of Colbourne family, which includes all of them. And of course, the many children of Hayborn. Susie said, many? Poor Charlotte.
Exactly. Hopefully not the 12 that her mother had.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, I don't think Alexander will put Charlotte through that. Not that you could really avoid it at that time, but Jan Brown said, thank you, ladies. Always fun to hear your recaps. Julianne, same thing. Thank you, ladies. Reno is the one who brought up, did you feel you missed Charlotte's family not at the wedding? Yes, I did miss them. I think they should have been there. I get why they weren't, but I think they should have done that. There is one comment that I want to read, but I don't know how to pronounce the first name. The last name is Karioku. She says, thank you, ladies, for the company along this journey. Can't wait to see for what comes next. Susan said, I can't believe this is the last recap. It did feel kind of surreal when we were doing it.
Yes. Yeah, it ended up pretty close to 2 hours. So.
Yes. Armida said that she was Armida 18 says, thanks for the discussion. I'm a little surprised you didn't talk about a particular flaw within the episode.
Which one?
I'm looking, it's like a book. I'm looking for what the flaw is. So I don't have to read the whole comment. She said, for me, the elephant in the room is the rom-com comedy of errors device they employed. And you mentioned in this video, so far, I've only seen a couple of people discuss how this important real estate in the series could have and should have been used to develop much better scenes. To be fair to the writers and directors and producers, the challenges they faced to bring us season 2 and 3 were formidable. But it seemed like they started with the dramatic episode 6 cliff scene they wanted and worked their way backward. I mean, it could have, but I think they did what they could with what they had. And I think that top of their mind was pleasing the fandom. I think they really, really did work the entire series to make us happy. And I think that's why it played out the way it did, because that was yes, they wanted it to be successful. Yes, they wanted it to be good, but they also wanted to give to the fans what we worked hard for.
I'm sorry, I still missed what the flaw was.
That they didn't utilize the comedy of errors plot line to create more in-depth scenes.
Oh,
she felt that was a flaw, but I think it was fine. I think it was good. And that comment, by the way, if you guys want to go read that, it was much longer than what I gave you. So I just didn't want to read it all on here because we are running out of time here. But there are so many comments, and we are seeing all of them that you put on there. We have not interacted with all of them, but we are reading all of them, and we love that you guys are responding to it. So there's so many comments that are on there that we didn't discuss in this episode. We went through the ones that were short and sweet that we could discuss, we can go over. We really appreciate you guys coming along with us on this journey and being as active on our page as you are. We really, really appreciate it. We like interacting with you. And again, this is not the end. We're going to come up with more. We're going to come back with, we're going to have a guest podcaster on with us next time we meet, which might be, we'll put out the date as soon as we know, but I believe we're going to take a 2-week break while we do end of school stuff. Actually, might be a 3-week break it'll be a 2-week break before we record, 3-week before we get it out. So we are going to you guys will not hear from us for 3 weeks, but it's just to accommodate life And while Janice and I love talking about this, I've got kids that are coming out of school and all these end of the year things, field trips and graduations, and it's a lot. So we're going to take a little break, but we are going to come back with our guest on our show. And then we are going to dig into the characters. We're going to dig into relationships. We're going to dig into ironies and parallels. And I think Janice and I decided we kind of want to stay in the Jane Austen universe, at least for now, talking about some other stories of hers, some other movies, breaking some of those down. And now that Janice and I both have BritBox, there's a lot of Jane Austen-esque stories there. I found a Sense and Sensibility that was 5 episodes that I've never seen. I've only seen the movie. So there's that. Right. There's the 5-episode long Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth, who is not my favorite Darcy, but still I love him. So there's a lot of things that we can discuss, and we are going to keep it Sanditon for the foreseeable future. And I want to remind you that if you have some fan fiction that you would like us to read, we would like to do another fan fiction episode. We're reading your work online. I think last season we did at least 2 or 3, didn't we? Mm-hmm. 2 or 3 pieces?
2 that I can remember right offhand, but yeah.
So if any of you have continuations from season 3, we would love to see those. If you had something different play out, we might read those too. I think first we're going to focus on ones that continue beyond season 3 instead of altering what we've already seen. So we get those to us. Let us know if you want us to recap and review your work on our podcast. Reach out to us. You can reach out to us at our email, which if you listen to the end of our episode, it's listed there. You can also find us on our Facebook group, which is the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. You can reach out to us there as well.
Also, just encourage your friends that love Sanditon to subscribe.
Yes.
Because it'll help us get interviews.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main motivation.
Yes, we would really, really like to interview more people, and the more listeners we have, the more credibility we have, so we can get some more interviews for you. So don't forget to share this with your friends and family. If you love this podcast, go ahead and give it some thumbs ups and share it with your friends. And we would love to hear from you. We are so thankful for this fandom that interacts with each other like family. And I really do. I've said this before, but Janice and I met because of this, and I consider her now one of my good friends. And I'm so thankful for this community and thankful for you guys for listening to us and giving us a place to talk about this show, so our husbands don't want to leave us by harassing them with all of this.
Yeah, they're sick of it. Yeah.
Yes. So we will see you guys in 3 weeks with our guest speaker on here. Until then, bye guys.
Goodbye.
Are you craving more TSC content? Head on over to our social media accounts. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and our Facebook group, the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. Also, check out our website, thesanditonchronicles.com. Of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear and what your thoughts are. Email us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tune in every week for new episodes.